but for some of you who are jealous, you know, my coffee is already almost over. So soon we'll be in the same position. I didn't have an intention to present you any thoughts or lectures, but yesterday I had another good conversation with sort of academic or student environment at Harvard, and I had that lecture there, and it was a sort of, people were enthusiastic and they were happy to hear that, and I just decided probably to do that again today, because you know, these questions and Q&As about me, about all these, I would say, cheesy questions, or how you name it. You can ask me anywhere, and even you know it from the press. But what I want you to know is what I'm thinking about present and future of Ukraine. I'm not talking about past today, because I think we talk about past and think and reflect on past more than necessary. So probably we need to talk about future and focus on that. And I'll tell you a little bit about who is the biggest enemy and who is the biggest friend in Ukraine, in my humble opinion. And probably afterwards we will have discussion and Q&As, and I will be very happy not only to talk to you or to present my thoughts, but only to listen. What do you guys think? Do you have any opinions on what I describe and will describe, and probably some proposals on your vision of Ukraine, because actually that's something that I'm thinking about. I asked to bring these charts or these boards, or what is it, flip chart, because probably I'll put down some thoughts. I'm not very strong in PowerPoint presentations anyway. We don't have here a screen, so yeah. So we couldn't do it anyway. So I'll start. When we talk about future of Ukraine, it's very important.
Sorry.
Decrease the level of microphone a little bit.
So sorry. Can you just
can you hear it now?
Yeah.
It's better, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about future of Ukraine, we first need to define the goal, or the point where we want Ukraine to approach. Sometimes I feel that this goal is not defined, because people think of different options, different issues talking about Ukraine. So I define my personal goal for Ukraine is to become a prosperous country. It's very simple and very wide, but you can measure it. You can measure it by GDP numbers, you can measure it by, actually you can measure it arithmetically. So I think it's the best thing to define a goal, because if you say I want to make my people happy, it's a little bit murky and a little bit vague, because we have different perceptions of happiness. But prosperity is something you can count and measure. So I would say, let's define a goal. I think everybody can agree with me, to make Ukraine a prosperous country. So to define this goal, we need to have a strategy. But before we come to strategy, we want to define our weak and strong issues, our weaknesses and advantages. And before we want to have that, we probably need to have tools or a framework within which we gotta move and operate. I mean, we need to know some basic rules or basic principles, how the goal I define could be approached. So I will put down 5 basic. Let's start from this. It's a framework. It's not strategy. It's not what we're gonna do. It's some principles, rules, or philosophy we should, keep in our mind while implementing our strategy. So, framework. Number one is think about Ukraine in terms of future, not in terms of past. I'll explain a little bit. It seems to me that we have a very complicated past. And it seems to me that many our politicians and generally people who care about what is going on in Ukraine are focused too much on what was in Ukraine earlier and what used to be earlier. And these things, they divide us. We have, all of you know that our history is complicated, and Ukraine as a country, as an international country, emerged like only 25 years ago. Before that, you had, this country was always, or almost always, not mentioning times of Kazakh Republic and like Kyrgyz times, always part, Ukrainians were always part of some big empires, of big, they were like subordinates of big authorities. Namely, the last 200 or 300 years, Russian Empire, which became afterwards Soviet Union, and Austro-Hungarian Empire. So heading to these different parts, we had two different developments, two societies, like Western and Eastern Ukraine. So some of these people, like living in Western Ukraine, faced the policy and approach of Austro-Hungarians, which allowed, for example, Ukrainians to keep their culture, preserve them, and to be cautious and to be, I would say, to understand that what Ukrainian culture, language, and habits were. Wasn't it because Austro-Hungarian Empire was more, let's say, human, or they did like Ukrainians more than, for example, Russian Empire, who were like post-trade and they had different approach to policy? No. It was everything not because of that. It was just practical reasons, because the Kaiser of Austro-Hungary, he thought of Western Ukraine, of Galicia, as a place where were two nations, dominant nations, Polish and Ukrainians, and in order not of one of that nation to dominate, they wanted to keep both of them fighting for their cultures and rivaling each other. And that was their policy. That also kept kept them safe from having a big nationalistic approach from like Polish or Ukrainians, so both of them were given the right to fight for their culture. That's how we preserve our culture and language and habits and the religion in Western Ukraine. So we should be conscious. So if we know that Western Ukrainians now speak Ukrainian, they're like more European oriented, they are more conscious about their roots and origins. That's not because they are better, or not because Eastern Ukrainians are worse, or they love the country less. That's just because under circumstances these parts of Ukraine were developed. And we need to understand that now. And if we want to have a country keep safe and not collapse and keep sustainable, we need to understand that the past is complicated, and we need to have only memory from the past, but not the past itself. Because from my point of view, if you have a memory and you remember, it's your knowledge and it's your torch on the road to future. If you have a past it's just a burden, a grip on your backpack that you need to bring. And if you go somewhere, if you want to climb up, and you really want to do it, like on Everest, so the harder your backpack is, the heavier your backpack is, the harder it is for you to come up and to climb. So we need to focus on our future, our joint future, and I want to define our nation today in terms of 21st century nation, not in terms of 19th century nation. That's a big problem of many Ukrainian intellectuals. They still do think of Ukraine as a country of, say, DNA, Ukrainians by origin, people who speak Ukrainian or who just define themselves as somebody with the roots of proper nationality, Ukrainian nationality. I think that should be fine for the approach of the end of 19th century when, as you probably read, the famous book of Hannah Arendt, who wrote a book, Totalitarianism and Imperialism, and she defines very good, like, issues and points how people in the 19th century succeeded to gain their independence. They defined nationality as the only tool to fight imperialism, because nationalism was a very good idea to oppose itself to imperialism. Because before that, people didn't feel their nationalities. They were part of empires. They felt as subordinates and subject of like some kingdoms of rulership, of divine kings of wings, empires, and powers. So after that, nationalism emerged, and it was very important to fight that way. Nowadays, that's gone, because the world is flat, as Thomas Friedman from New York already said, from Washington, sorry, said. The world is flat. We don't have all of these formal borders. In the world of internet, of interconnection, of interdependence, we need to define nation differently. So we have people, in my point of view, nation is people who want to live together in the future, who share their future, who share their goals. They're together, no matter where they came from, no matter how they approach to this point today. Okay, let's stop here, let's start from the very beginning, let's say we are all living in a new Ukraine and start moving forward. That's something that you guys, or I mean, some of you who possess American passports and feel Americans, it's something that you guys did in 1776. So it was a brand new thing, a brand new country. Nobody told you where are you from, west or east, what language or your religion was yours. Was just principles and basic things. Ukraine needs to do that. I know it's, for some of you it probably can sound a little bit utopian because we still have past and we can't get rid of it. We don't need to get rid of it. We have our memories. We have our language. Although we have 2 languages in the country, which people speak, and we need to, be aware of the fact that all things that other people aside of country or adversaries or rivals want to make to have our weaknesses, we need to make it no weakness but our advantage. So the second thing is very, I would say, realpolitik approach, which I admire very much. First, there is a famous quote, I believe, by Prime Minister of Great Britain, of the United Kingdom, the times of Queen Victoria, Lord Palmerston, who said that Britain has no permanent allies and Britain has no permanent enemies. Britain has only permanent interests. And that's something Ukraine needs to stick to. I mean, we should stop talking about who is a friend of Ukraine, and who is an enemy of Ukraine, who is an adversary, who is who will be begging you. Nobody will but yourself. So the framework, that number 2, should be no enemies, no friends, interests.
It's okay.
Third, we should be aware of our geography. I mean, when I say aware, I mean conscious. We need to understand that geography is what we have, and we won't change our borders. I mean, they are being changed right now, but I think that's a different story. We'll talk about that, but generally, we won't change our position on the map. We'll have the same neighbors, good or bad, name it, but you will have them. You need to keep aware, be aware of that, and keep our conscience very clear that that's not going to change, and nobody will get deprive of us of that. It will be there everywhere, all the time. So geography, be aware of geography. It's freezing here, isn't it? That's why I'm trying to be so energetic. Fourth thing is to approach our goal, we need to have established and rely on robust civil society. I'll talk about it later, but just civil society is our key to success. No authority, no power, no allies from other countries, no money, just civil society, robust civil society. And we'll talk about that later because it's probably one of the most important tools. And the last one, but not the least, probably it's also very important to keep in mind for everybody who builds this country, is all we do, all the steps, all the strategies, all the tactics should be subordinated, should be should go with one notion, that we need to have constant development and sustainability, step by step. Doesn't matter how fast or how, how fast is it. We need to keep that going all the time, step by step. Sustainability and constancy of development. So these are five, I would say, tools. That's not strategies. It's not something we need to achieve or approach. That's some principles we need to use while approaching and using our strategy. So now we'll come to the very beginning, and I'll say you. So why don't we achieve all these things? So what is the obstacle? Who is our biggest enemy? Some people say that, mentality is our big obstacle. Probably there is something in these words, but I'll give you some examples, and you'll understand that mentality has nothing to do with it. Consider Korea. We have two countries, North Korea and East Korea, and South Korea. You know that these countries are slightly different.
Yeah.
Do you think these people have different mentalities?
No.
I don't think so. It's one nation. I mean, in terms of DNA, or it's one nation. They still have common grannies. They have common families, common past and everything. So they were separated 70 years ago. 70 years is nothing for mentality. Mentality is being formed for hundreds of years. So they have the same mentality. So why do they? That South Korea has GDP per capita 30 times bigger than North Korea, I believe. So don't tell me about mentality. It's it's an excuse. I don't believe that excuse. It's nothing that has to do with mentality. Some say that it's ethnical and cultural homogeneity. Belgium, Switzerland, Singapore, Morocco, they have Arabs and Berbers, name it. Finally the USA. Yeah, finally the USA. So ethnical and cultural homogeneity is not anymore, and it actually for the last couple of hundreds of years, starting from the United States and probably other countries afterwards, it's never more an obstacle to building a sustainable society. So probably this, and even more than that, we probably have cultural diversity, but generally we are a homogeneous country. So what I think, the fact that we have two languages, it's not an obstacle. In comparison to Singapore, who has not only two languages, but three languages which are completely different and they can't understand each other speaking their mother tongues. Three different religions, Malaysians, who are, by the way, Muslims and speak Malaysian. Then they have Tamil Indians, who are generally, I believe, they are Hindus or I believe they are Buddhists. I don't know. I believe, yeah. And then they have Confucius Chinese, who speak different language, and they have like the British past and many white big number of white settlers, and all that somehow they managed to keep in one bowl, and they made like a real good soup from that, I think. So that's not a question as well. Some say controversial history. Once again, I'll name you Spain with their civil war. I'll name you Belgium, which was artificially created after Napoleonic Wars. There was no country like Belgium.
and there was no like nation like Belgium. They created from two parts, from the Wallon part, French-speaking part, where like that time they felt more like Dutch people. So how did they manage to build a nation? Certainly we even now have some controversy. They sometimes argue with each other, but still it's a prosperous country. They live together. Everything is all right. Take Spain with or even the United States with their bloody civil war in 1856, 1861. So there were many people who didn't believe that there's one nation this time. I remember like the times of Gettysburg Address, how desperately Lincoln was trying to keep this country together. And actually, an interesting fact, even I didn't know that before. So actually, if you see in the history, he was not like defending abolitionism, and he was not consciously just anti-slavery guy. What he wanted to do, he wanted to preserve the country. So he said, okay, if we all go anti-slavery, let's do it. If all guys decide that slavery is necessary, okay, I'm not that much about that, up to that, but let's do that. Let's keep country together. So somehow all of these prosperous countries went through periods of turmoil, uncertainty, and many other things. Lastly, hostile neighbors. What to do with neighbor we do have now? I will say that's a hard one. But you have Israel. Israel is surrounded not by the best neighbors in the world, for them. So some of them even don't recognize the right for the country to exist. So somehow they managed to build a country, although they have a lot of difficulties, obstacles. They do many controversial things which Europeans, for example, treat differently. But remember one of these frameworks: no enemies, no friends, just teachers. So they just keep going. Somehow they keep going. Once again, we can talk about right and good things, but who are we, non-Israelis, to judge them? Because it's their future. I mean, we can have our own opinion, but it's their future. The same, I don't want somebody else to judge what Ukrainians do, but because it's our future. I respect what America wants from us. I respect what China or Russia wants from us, but I'm sorry, that's our future. So we somehow will do what we need to do. So I think all these obstacles are actually not obstacles. These are some difficulties we need to overcome, and we need to somehow to handle them. But it's possible and it's plausible. So what is then the biggest enemy, and the most hard one and the most difficult one? From my point of view, it's one word. This word is distrust. We distrust our government. We distrust other people, and moreover, we distrust ourselves. That's Ukrainian biggest enemy. You just think about that a little bit, and you understand. It's not only the Ukrainians don't rely on their government. It's not only the Ukrainians don't rely on their city-mate peers or friends. They don't rely on themselves. They just don't trust themselves. And that's something that made them, there is a good English word I've learned just here. It's called diffidence. Not that many people know that. It's like when you're not confident in yourself. You're just sort of how to say it. You're not sure of your potency. You're not sure of your skills. You have all the second thoughts about yourself. So
confidence is such an important part of trust. You
Yeah.
can never trust someone else if you're
Yeah.
not confident.
Yeah, that's true. So what are origins of this trust? From my point of view, it's three main things. It's upbringing, it's education, and it's lack or absence of positive examples or role models. So I'll slightly focus on all of that. But before that, I will define, once again, I'm a physicist, so I like thinking of frameworks or some mathematical apparatus which helps you to define things. So let's define two movements or two tendencies. A bottom-up movement, which what we call civil society, and top-down movements, which is like development where from the top, like what, in simple words, one thing, what should civil society and people, ordinary people do, and then what authorities or power man should do. So start with the first, upbringing. It's a long story, you can't change the way you were brought up, but you can change and make it different with your children. Confidence, reliability of their own skills and talents is vital just to implement it in the families, within the families. Find people of your circle and try to expand it day by day and year by year. So bring up your children differently than you were brought up. Just understand that confidence and, you know, this idea of freedom of choice is vital and important for destroying or eliminating distrust we were talking about. So your children will see it, they will understand it, and they will value it. They will like sort of, they will absorb this idea, this new interface, new framework. Thus you will create a new cell of civil society, which is a family. It's a smaller cell. Other people will create their own cells, and I'll let them. So let's see this one cell or one good family, which is different from what was before. So remember, like you were brought up in one framework, and you try to sort of come over the things and to do it different. So you're the first. Somebody will do it next to you, then the others will find it next to you, and that will sort of combine together, and you will sort of expand and interact with each other, and then finally you will merge merge each other. So you'll have a bigger cell. And it's like, other people around you will find the most skillful and the most committed and the most successful to make their local leaders. These leaders will be guiding themselves, guiding us. So finally you have many of these clusters, and they will be united in big clusters, which already initial society cells will form bigger society cells, like communities and and district communities and city communities and things like that. And then this upbringing is very important, because you need to show children that there is a different way. And children are very grateful usually, because you don't need to invest that much. The interest rate will be really big, much bigger than we grown up people. So that's about upbringing. Then about education. So you should organize voluntary movements at schools, in kindergarten, like basic things. Do your own Saturday and Sunday schools. Organize them yourself. Don't ask for, citing once again Kennedy, ask not what the country can do for you, ask what you can do for your children. I would say that. Yeah. So do your own Saturday Sunday schools for children, where those who have skills and courage and commitment can teach and educate them probably differently from the schools, if the school has not managed to do that. But show them some things, organize museums and nature tours. Take the children not only of your family, but 10, 15, 20 families. Go with them to Museum of Arts, go with them to have a barbecue, to show them trees, things like that. Be pilots of the process. And trees, right? How to? Then the other thing is higher education. Right? How to find financial possibilities and promote the idea, encourage the idea of higher education abroad, like here in the USA. Not only for your children, but how, if you see somebody bright or somebody smart who just don't have idea how to apply for American university or for things, he needs a lot of money, just get together, either sponsor him or just sometimes many Ukrainians even don't know that money is not the key issue here. If you're talented and bright, you can go here and they will pay for you. I mean, many people have no clue about that. So don't only think of your own families, but think of other people. So these, this common action, it creates what we like need to have. It creates trust, mutual trust, not only in yourself, but trust in yourself, but also mutual trust between like members of this primary or initial civil cells what he's talking about. Then role models or successful examples. One more thing before that for you, that local advice we can talk about later. You can create a big association of Ukrainian alumni, and I know there are some of them that already exist, but not just formal, just to go somewhere to have a drink sometimes or to see each other, but do some things, make it really work. Include alumni of top 100 universities in the world, not only from America, abroad. I know many people, Ukrainians are in Singapore, in Japan, in Germany, wherever, and interact with each other, promote each other, and make a sort of party, non-political, but a sort of political party with non-political means. I mean, be a framework for new Ukrainian, bench of substitutes for bigger, for bigger goals later. I know some of you are already doing that, but actually I don't see it. So yesterday we already argued about that at Harvard. So it's good that it exists, but let you interfere and alter the common course of events in Ukraine. Just do something as well. The third idea I was mentioning, part of education and upbringing, is positive examples and role models. So there are many things you guys or we guys as civil society can do without any help of government. Moreover, contrary or despite of countries, authorities, non-desire, non-willingness to participate, just to be opposite to that. Hong Kong in 60s or 70s, I don't remember, they presented the city advocate system. So they had just people with like lawyers, or people with economic education, or just smart, and until they asked the people without basic education who started up voluntary advocate movements to help the other people who are less confident, who are less educated or intelligent in that way, to solve their local problems. You just go to court. If you need, go to sue the authorities. If you need, help them. I don't know how to explain in English. The word Jack. Go to Jack's.
New York is a community board.
Yeah. So you can do it without any official, standard. Yes, stand, and it's not only the authorities don't need to approve that, but it's despite of their will. You can need it because that's a rivalry between the high authorities, between the power possessed people and civil society. What's create then mutual trust between bigger part of this society. So you do that, you learn your rights, your constitutional possibilities, and start helping. Every new successful story will enhance, encourage your peers and and even passive observers, even people who say, okay, I don't think that you can do something with it. The first initial distrust is going to change with trust after you have first, second, third good example, and that has nothing to do with reforms from top down. Promote your own activity through Facebook and social media. Be active. Don't be very modest. Don't be just be self-confident. Promote yourself. Say, come on, I did that. I have to these desperate or disinherited people and disinherited people. Yeah, and I did it because I wanted to do that. Is somebody else joining me? Okay, let's have 3 of us, 4 of us, 10 of us. But promote yourself. Don't be modest. Don't be shy. Yelling, crying loud of what you're doing. So those of you who become most successful and persuasive will form and constitute the foundations for future political movements. and which in turn will be converted into real political parties. We don't have real political parties, not only because, you know, the guys in Kiev don't want them to develop. The political parties are not, like, you know, created from top down once again. They created bottom-up movements. You don't need to have a big national party in Kiev. Just make a small district party. Make small political movement in your region and in your oblast, wherever. Be successful, and after that, you'll see how many talented, interesting, brand new leaders you have. So these all things I was talking about, it's in respect to bottom-up movement, civil society. Then come back to big guys, top-down movement. What should they do? The first thing they should do is to share power with local communities. They need to give up part of their power. It's what we call now decentralization. Although some of you think that this word, like, you know, smells bad, because some of you think that means that you want to, like, you know, divide the country into parts. No way. We still need to have a strong government with strong and very transparent, you know, rights and tools in Kiev. It means, like, you certainly don't give up right of, like, you know, foreign policy, you know, national bank things. You don't give up, you know, intelligence, army things. That certainly should be very strong. But you should give to more rights and powers to people to earn their money locally and to spend their money locally. I think it's much better that when Lviv or Odessa or Kharkiv, you know, local authorities take care of money they take from their people, because they know better what roads they need, they know better what kindergartens or school do they need. They don't need to go to Kiev all the time to ask on bended knees, please give us new money, because what our system now creates, it creates typically different behavior of successful local authority or like, you know, or power man. Who is a successful mayor nowadays? Is somebody who can go to Kiev and to solve the question and the problem there and to get the things done in Kiev. That's a completely different story. If it has nothing to do with that, with real effective execution. So if we now have, say, have a notion, this guy is a good mayor. Why is he a good mayor? Because sort of the things are better in the region or in the city. Why they are better? Because they went to Kiev and asked for more money or for more, some advantages for him in favor and depriving some others of this money. So he just solved personally things. How do they do that? All of us know. So that has nothing to do with the notion to be a good CEO, which they need to be. And now we have local elections tomorrow. People even don't know that these guys don't have any power. I mean, they just totally depend on Kiev's will. And that's why you don't have the bench of substitutes. That's why all these people, even, like, you know, some of them call themselves Democrats, some of them like are for past, or future, or present. All of them are for past. I mean, all of them were had their career started in the 90s. All of these guys who were on Maidan, who were fighting the guys on Maidan, but all of them, I mean, where are the new guys? And how can you get new guys with a system where Kiev like controls everything? So the new guys, the only way to express themselves is not to start a local company or to become a local, you know, politician or mayor or, you know, deputy. Just to go to Kiev and once again ask on bended knees big owners of parties to include in the list. And they will already own their way after that. They already own them, and they already should be sort of grateful, and that gratefulness you always also know what it means. They all are constrained after that. So you will have a competition of concepts and success of tale stories in different constituencies. So social nets will bring up to central rulerships those who really deserve it. And this is a sort of independent, you know, how we have now musical platforms nowadays. So 90s and 80s, they still had big major labels who sort of dictated to people what music you should listen. They just promoted the band or everything. You had SoundCloud, you had like Spotify, you have even on iTunes. It's much easier for an independent to come there. You have YouTube, many other things. So everybody can come and people just take their pick. Many of these new big stars in America just came up from there. So record companies and A&R managers are no longer responsible for a supply, but rather musical repertoire platform users do it by interactively acting with the platform. So demand issue, what I mean, demand issue should surpass supply issue. So you need, what in Ukraine and politics you do have now, it's you have supply, and then this is a supply, and take what we give you for granted. It should be different. It should be demand, and then after demand you'll find a supply. I know that's basic Adam Smith things. You economists probably know how it works in economics, but the same thing works in politics. Ukraine doesn't have it still. Then, give little and medium-sized success stories, once again, not only in the local levels of civil society, but also in the level of country. Police reform key is one of that. I mean, probably that changed not so many things, and probably it's just a very minuscule thing, but it gives at least a drop of trust to government. It encourages people. Like, Cambridge Academia as an example of a good university. Why should you replicate that everywhere, like that principle? Have that, change the system of education because you have a good idea how the things can be done. Not only that, there are many interesting examples of successful stories in the other universities. Kharkiv, Kiev Polytechnical Institute, and Lviv University. I remember we were the first we implemented this testing system still in the 90s. So you should do it. Government should be smart and shrewd to see something and think strategically how to replicate it and to implement it into the future. Then the third thing is a very, I would say it's a very powerful marketing rule, advertising rule, and people like it. Although it's probably not, it's a controversial one. You in America call it, I like this term, it's called fried fish. So this is when you have somebody who, like some crooks, thieves, criminals, and you need to get them punished, especially some big and famous. Take 1, 2, or 3 of them and make it happen that they go to prison. But because that means that you are focused on punishing and the rule and changing how the rule of law principle, how the rule of law is working. So 1, 2, or 3 open trials are necessary. Although these should not be scapegoats anyway, and you shouldn't push too hard. Because if you're just focused on finding oligarchs and making, fighting with them and then just, bringing them to prison, you'll get just guerrilla wars because these guys have a lot of things to defend and a lot of things to lose, right? Otherwise, you get guerrilla wars. They already had it in the Philippines, in Colombia, and many other things. So just be shrewd. Don't push too hard, but do something. Because if you don't do anything and you don't have this fried fish, big, big crooks, thieves, and criminals that you get into prison, then people won't believe that you're gonna do something. Just small examples won't work, and we still don't have it. Education. Initiate negotiation on topics of education with big players like the US or the EU. If they grant you, you talk about, we ask for javelins or we ask for big financial support or financial aid from IMF or America and others. I know that now they're talking about like $50 billion, or 20 already been decided, but we need 50 more. And this is a huge money, man. You know, this is a huge money. So let's ask for 10 times less, or 1,000 times less. If they grant you 10,000, your 10,000 brightest students with stipends in top 30 universities, that will cost them 500 million. 500 million is, let's just see once again, it's 500 million. It's how times it's significantly less. It's 1, 2, it's 100. It's 100 times less than they ask for from IMF now. 50% of these people will come back. Probably 50 other percent will stay. They will have many families. They change their future. But 50 come back. 10% of them will go to work for government, and there will be different people. 1% will be future leaders of their country, and that's a huge investment with a huge rate, both to the country, for Ukraine, and to the country who will invest in that, because they are all 99% who won't work for government, who will still be will be left behind, will still advocate both Ukraine in its effort forever, and will be grateful for the country like the US, Canada, the EU, whatever, who provided them with that opportunity. So it will be a big, will bring a big bondage between two countries. So the last but not the least, be modest, sincere, and transparent. By that I mean just explain to people what do you know are you gonna do, and what have you done step by step in simple words, by simple means. Also be transparent. Be sure that they understand everything, that there is no second thoughts left, there is no uncertainty in what you do and what you explain. If there is something you shouldn't tell, don't tell, but be sure that people understand the majority of what you said. Then be modest. I mean, you can't, have 3 new model Mercedes cars, or have possess 10 big houses and say you are going to fight with corruption. It doesn't work like that, man. It just doesn't work, because your salary, or even your, let's say, business, is something that you can afford 1 living room in all your houses, and probably one bathroom. Yeah, but I understand it's hard, but you need to give up things if you really want to change something. I still don't see that in our authorities. So, having said that, I'm almost over and almost finished. And at the end, I will give you the strategic goals, 7 strategic steps we should do in order to, in my humble opinion, to approach the mission, the goal, which is to make Ukraine a successful and prosperous country. So these are 7 goals. 7 strategic issues. Sorry, not goals, issues. So the first strategy is here. First, and the most important, that was a big part of our lecture, it's trust. Build trust. I think that's 50%. If you build trust within society, civil society, mutual trust between power and civil society, and then finally with civil society and all other people, because civil society is only 10 to 15% of active part of the population in agriculture, then you are already 50% of the road to success. But there are 6 more. Second, it's decentralization. Give power to local communities. Decentralize. Three, move over oligarchs, not eliminate them. Move over. By that I mean, move them over. Do it gradually, step by step. If you want to eliminate them immediately, they will destroy you first. They are strong, probably stronger than everybody. Like even the best efforts you'll do, if they will see that's a mortal combat, you probably will lose. So just move them over. And that's what I mean. They will have a good option not to fight you, but to create a sort of Ukrainian Magna Carta. And you just deprive them of some of their rights and possessions and, belongings, but you'll have more space. Moreover, for them, it's easier and more profitable because believe me, some of these guys, or most of them, are at least smart, and they understand that good rules for everybody, and having some strong, or stronger than now, central power is better than Hobbesian war, everybody all against all what they have now. Because they're not that comfortable as well. They need to fight each other. So don't come to them and say, okay, I'm gonna destroy all of you, or I'll eliminate your business, I'll take it over. Because that's the same, what they are doing. Come to them and say, guys, here what you need to do, it's new rules, just move over, all of you, here will be the state. The state will be the biggest one. And here you are. You can't eliminate oligarchy also because, first of all, it exists everywhere. It existed in the States in the 90s when you had Rockefeller, Morgan, Vanderbilt, and all these other guys who controlled the biggest state of the country. And what they didn't kill them, they didn't put them to prison, they just passed the antitrust laws. And that helped, step by step. They still have oligarchs of this, I will say cartels, which is a more civilized way of naming oligarchs, or more civilized way of behaving. But they have them in Korea, they had them in Japan, they had them in Eastern countries. So how these countries are developing, and they're doing well. It's not everybody lives like Scandinavia. It's like it takes your time. Ukraine is not ready to get rid of them because really it's a shrewd and very complicated and sophisticated process. So just move over. By having said that, I don't think that we need to defend them. I don't excuse them. I just want us to be conscious, smart, and wise, and do it step by step. And if somebody says we need to destroy the power of oligarchs, a politician said it to you openly, that's populism. I don't believe we do that. These guys pay you a salary and you talk that you need to eliminate them. No. just let be conscious. Come to them and create the rules. First, probably it will be not very just rules, not very fair rules for everybody, but better than today. Then in 10 years you'll change it once again. Then in another 10 years, that's what I mean by move over gradually. The fourth is very complicated, but you need to somehow to do that. Reform judicial system. And here I have simple examples. I really don't understand why can't we make the same thing we made with police, with judicial system. It's probably much more serious reform, but still, you need a political will. Just imagine one day you take, I don't know how many judges we have or we need to have, but you take graduates from good schools, Ukrainian, American, wherever, with law education, 25-year-old guys, boys and girls, you say them, and you replace with them all the judges we have now. Like what they did with police. You say these guys are unexperienced. Yes, probably first 1 or 2 years will be hard, but still, mistakes they do will be having acted sincerely and fairly. They will still create less damage than these guys who we have now. And in 1 or 2 years, they will be experienced. But don't change 10% because they will be corrupted immediately in 1 year. Don't change half, change everybody. Just 1 day. Yes, it will be hard for a year or 2, but do that. Do that. And it's not a utopia because see, with police they said the same, it's impossible. But they replaced and it works. you need to prepare that. Probably it will take you 2 years or more to start the system before you implement it. You need to have trainings, you need to have educational courses, you need to have programs, but you can do that. Then, the fifth, it's army. I call it, like, we need to keep in mind that our army should be just slightly stronger than necessary for that country. You know why? If we don't have a strong army, just stronger, probably exaggerate the role of army, like they did in Israel, like it did in South Korea, like it did in many other countries. You should do that. I shouldn't explain why. And once again, if it comes to a real war, probably you will lose the war. I mean, it's impossible to do. But before it comes to war, everybody, even the biggest adversary, will think not twice, but 3 or 4, 10 times before studying it, knowing that these guys that are fight hard. And the high prices for your adversary, that less plausible is that it's going to happen. So army is very important. 6, it's a sort of it's mass media. Mass media reform is necessary, and you can approach the goal we are talking about without it. What we have in TV now. Probably some of you who are thinking about Ukrainian television think it's much worse than, or much less developed than the United States or the UK. I will tell you what, it's much much richer, much wealthier, and much more developed than, for example, TV industries in some neighboring countries, like Romania, like Bulgaria, like Slovakia, and even Poland. Polish TV sometimes thinks, we look at it and say, okay, we have more money there in Ukraine. Do you know why? Because it's sponsored by oligarchs, and it's now that it's profitable. They do it because they keep it as their private army. I mean, private non-military armies to defend themselves. So Ukrainian TV is not living by their means. So what I mean by that, you should make it once again entertainment and not private armies of oligarchs. And if you adopt laws, which, for example, I don't know, it's like theory. I didn't think about it that hard, but for example, it should be forbidden for some final beneficiary to own more than 25% of a TV in Ukraine. That will mean that no oligarch will have personal control on that. That will suddenly mean that the next day we'll lose interest in TV. And TV will become extremely poor and uninteresting. But we will become independent. And we'll live by our own means. Because if we are poorer than our neighbors, then our TV is also poorer than our neighbors. Suddenly, we should wait a little bit and know that, so we'll have budgets 5 times less than we do have now. But we'll have independent TV. Nobody gonna change the minds of our constituency because this or this guy wants to be that or that guy, to be present in the parliament or to be the president or whatever. We need to change mass media world. And the last, but once again, but not the least, probably the most important, make education your flagship. Education should be a flagship of your strategy. All these steps somehow should be making regarding education. Education is, I think, our avenue. That should be the biggest strategy, the bigger, most focused efforts should be put there. I know it's a very long-term investment. I know that's not something that's going to work today or tomorrow. But the story is, if there is no this 7th step, there is no everything else. Trust, decentralization, oligarchs, everything will work only in connection with this 7th and probably the most important part. So these are 7 strategic steps we go to make it relatively prosperous country. And finally, at the end, I will say, that's all seems like theory, and that's all probably seems like some of you who still possess this level of distrust, and I understand and respect that, will say, okay, these are just words. These are just words if only I say that, or if I only do that. But if you guys not only believe in what is written here, but also try a little bit, everybody do your own small part of that, there will be much bigger chance of making these things plausible and happen. And if not only you, but other colleagues and peers in different universities, different countries, and especially in Ukraine, will think different and will seriously focus on these things, things gotta be different. And for those of you who are studying here, I just want to say that I'm happy that you possess this knowledge, that you are gaining, your head becomes bigger, and that's great. But I'll be happy, and all of your countrymates will be happy that at least part of that they had will, the work of that they had will be committed for the sake of your country. Just do a bite, and the country will have a whole bunch of good things, and the strategy will be successful and will close the hole. I really ask you to do that. Without yourself, without you, that's only theory. With you, it's a success story. Thank you.
Thank you. That really lays out a great framework of true to your physics training about what to do. And I want to pull the thread a bit about how to make this real, the raw material of it. You've had meetings like this all over US, Fairmont, in Europe, all over Ukraine. I heard you give an interview in April of 2014 for public radio when you were at Zaporizhia, and you met with students in Zaporizhia. You've met with students, name a city, you've probably been in it, talking with students. What are you finding there? Because if you think about, to have what in business school we'd call a going concern, you talk about how do you build this country so that it develops step by step, that it's sustainable. What are you finding? And you also made an interesting point that really the market segment you need to change when you talk about civil society is just 10 to 15% of the overall population. So what are you finding when you're talking to these 10 to 15% of the population? What kind of themes and what are the raw materials Ukraine has to work with to implement the frameworks you just described?
Thank you for the question. I'll answer it philosophically. The nature, the origin of a human being is very similar in different parts of the world. So people generally are weak creatures everywhere, and generally have their own, accomplices and fears and hopes and instincts. So raw material, if you say that, I wouldn't say about people I wouldn't call it raw material because it's a little bit inappropriate. But what I think, it's the same everywhere in the world. I mean, the rules and good examples and education and upbringing, they make their things and they make their impact and things are happening. I gave you an example of South Korea and North Korea, but you can have yours example. I mean, many of you, including yourself, are Ukrainians, but we're brought up in different societies. So you don't behave and you don't think like the Ukrainians who live in the Ukraine, in that Ukraine. And doesn't mean that you are better or worse, no. It means that you were given different framework. So, I mean, material, as you say, put it in different, how you call this, a form, and
and you will have different, there is a good word, I don't remember how you call it. No, it's vessel. Yeah, good vessel, right? So, it depends on the form. The vessel depends on the form. So, I'm talking here about rules. First, tools, which we, how can you build these rules? And then tools. How can you, like, the vessel you need, yeah? So, I think that people, especially young people, 10%, 10-15% of this civil society, they are hungry for changes. They want to change. They want to get change. They want to have role models. They want to have these new books to study, and they are willing. Probably not to the extent we need today. Probably we still have to do a lot, but you need. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic, but only when you implement and you like gradual and constant efforts. So you should hold on all the time. You shouldn't, you should carry on. You should be there step by step, but don't lose a second of the time. So don't lose the grip. You should be there. And I think that that's why I'm doing all these things. I think that you should keep doing and keep doing and keep doing. Finally, I'll give you probably once again, not a very proper, but still I like the religious example. When Jesus Christ was preaching, nobody treated him seriously. I mean, generally. And actually, his goal was not to create an established Christian church. He never had it in his mind. He was just doing things. He was living good life. And as he was that persuaded that his disciples, they went and promoted this idea, and it became such attractive that people all over the world, like 2 billion people now, sort of use this framework. So you need to keep going.
So I hear you saying to be very pragmatic and practical, and to really be ready for a long haul. This is not a sprint.
No.
You're thinking in terms of decades. You're
Yes.
talking in terms of.
I don't believe in quick changes. Whoever will come and say, I will bring you quick changes, he's either a liar or a naive person.
Idiot.
Given that you talked about the top down, the bottom up, and creating these cells of different behavior, what's your perception now that you've been in the States for 2 months, a couple months? How do you perceive the role of volunteers inside Ukraine and volunteers outside Ukraine? And by volunteers, I'm trying to say like people who are not part of official structures of government. And how do you see what are the most effective forms of activity in your opinion?
Actually, I think the volunteer movement in Ukraine is probably one of these key issues that makes my narrative optimistic. Because I think that all of us were surprised in a good way, and were encouraged and impressed by the role volunteers started to play after the outbreak of events in Maidan and the war in the East. So, frankly speaking, it surprised me. I mean, I knew the Ukrainian people are ready to do that, but I didn't know that to such extent. So I think it's a good news. What is not a very good news is that
still people and even many volunteers, they do things in the box, not out of the box. And for example, if they have a very straightforward like idea, like to help to hospitals, to like people who have injuries, wounds, and to heroes and to families of the heroes who died. That's a very clear goal and very sacred, sacred reason to help. And certainly we need to do that. But it's a pity that there are some more, sophisticated and probably not surface goals that people still don't understand they need to work on, like the civil advocates movements, like this, like educational things, like going to kindergarten and schools, like something that won't probably make your ego or your psyche happy in one day doing that. Because if you work with somebody in hospitals, it's not only helpful for these people, but it also, sort of gains your mood and psyche. You feel happy after that, because it's a nature of a person. You want to do best things, and you do, and you feel somehow invigorated, right? But if you do some routine things, which probably result of that, you won't see it. Probably you'll see it when you get old, and not even in a year or two. You somehow think, okay, I'll do it tomorrow, or somebody else will come and do it, and we need that to do that as well. So that's not an assault, or it's not a conviction of some of like our volunteers that they are bad. I take a bow to them because they do a great job. But we all need to go further.
So it's not, Maidan, I think a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their head around because it was sort of this leaderless revolution, aggressively leaderless revolution, but it was this crucible that spawned very tangible volunteer efforts. Now it's the long, hard slog of what you're talking about, which is 10 years down the road or sort of even further. I'm going to open it up to questions in just a minute. But I wondered if you could comment, given your career and your work now, and actually throughout your whole career, you have worked a lot with people in other countries. How do you see people, how are your colleagues around the world, specifically in the Russian Federation, reacting to your work today?
First of all, I don't think that I do something that should, put some, special discussion within the circle of my colleagues in Russian Federation. I don't know when I do something they should think about it. They do have other things to think about. I'm not somebody like that bringing and pulling their life. They need to keep thinking about themselves. Secondly, the most of friends of mine who live in Russia somehow turned out to be people with whom I don't have significant major, contradictions and control. There is no controversy between us. So I don't have a single person in whom I disappointed, or a single person who thinks in a way that I wouldn't see him or her think. That not only means that all of them are good or like so for Ukraine, that also means that I also value people very honest, and I don't ask for people more than I can give. And I don't judge people. I always try to follow that, once again, biblical principle. Don't judge and you won't be judged. So I just think that people have their own choices. Don't have anybody in my close circle who really treats Ukraine with contempt or I don't have it. So I never had them in my circle. I don't have it. So I don't have any disappointment. I don't know what to say. I'm happy that the vast majority of our fans
also understand our position. They probably do not share all views, my views, which is normal and acceptable and understood. But as I understand and as I feel, the majority of our fans in Russia, they do understand and do accept what is my ideas. And actually, my idea was never and will never be anti-some country. I don't treat people by their passports, and I don't value people by their passports. I do people by their deeds, even not by their words, but their deeds.
Thanks. I'm going to open it up to questions. I see there are 2 microphones here. If you could come up and please say your name. As an American, say your name, okay? And then ask your question, and please keep it to questions. Thanks. Go ahead.
My name is Bogdan. I'm also a member of board of directors of an organization which is called Razum, which is non